Stephen Curtis Chapman and We the Kingdom with Brand New Life. You're on 94.9. It is 4:15 and we have Dr. John in the studio from Creation Ministries International. Good afternoon, Dr. John.
Good afternoon, Mick.
It's great to have you here again. Another awesome week we've just had. We were just talking about the news. There hasn't been any overly exciting local news.
No, not much local news, I suppose. But look, I had a bit of feedback from one of our regular listeners about last week's talk on the supposed, dinosaur to bird evolution, which, it's complete nonsense. But thank you, Sylvia. I'm glad you enjoyed it and that it was a help to see how some of the supposed science really just doesn't have a clue, you know. And Mick, this is a really important distinction to make. When we knock any of the scientific beliefs, we're only knocking what they might call historical science, right? Not because that's pure speculation, but we never criticise what we might call operational or experimental science, that is real science, because that's the sort of science that's given us the modern lifestyle we enjoy, our transport, our communications, household appliances, that science is repeatable. You can depend on it. It obeys the laws of physics and chemistry, and it's been a huge blessing, obviously, to mankind.
Yep.
But it's the speculative aspect of science that we take issue with. The pseudoscience that really has no evidence to back it.
Yep. And
it's interesting that you often find both types of science mixed in together. If you watch a David Attenborough nature documentary, for example, the photography is just fantastic, and some of the observations of nature are just absolutely breathtaking.
Yep.
It's real observational science. But then, of course, David Attenborough will give nature or the evolution the credit for what you're watching.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence for that. And then he throws in something like 250 million years ago, it wasn't quite like that.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, of course, he doesn't have any evidence for that either.
Well, but we know he's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that 250 million years ago.
That's right. Well, I mean, those years, they just don't exist. But people hear it repeated so often that it becomes very persuasive, and they eventually end up believing it.
Yeah,
I think in Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll's Mad Hatter, he said, "What I say 3 times is true," and the more often you repeat some nonsense, the more it gets ingrained in people's consciousness, and eventually it gets believed.
Even if you say something yourself enough times,
that's right.
You can end up believing
you eventually convince yourself that it's true.
Yeah,
and really that is the reason why we do what we do at Creation Ministries. We believe one of our jobs really is to protect Christians, because so that they don't get blown around by every wind of doctrine, so they're fully persuaded in the truth of the Bible. And that's why we give all the evidences that we give. And then, of course, if they're well established in their own stance on the truth of the Bible, they're able to reassure others of its truth. And that is so important for parents. You go to church, and it really is wonderful to see lots of little kids in the Sunday school and kids in the youth groups, but there is a huge dropout rate when they actually get out into the real world, and they start to cop flack and criticism for their beliefs.
Yeah.
And if they haven't got a good grounding in the absolute defensible truth of their Bible and its time frame and history, then they often fall away. And research has shown that the main reason given is science. Now, what they really mean is not science; it's evolution. And as I've just explained, that's not real science. You know, it's unproven speculation, devoid of evidence, and that. I suppose, in a nutshell, that is the importance of the creation type ministries, you know, and every Christian should be aware of and be familiar with our website, creation.com. You often mention it on the program, but it is so important. Any answers to any of the questions in this creation evolution area, you will find them on the creation.com website.
Yep.
There's a search window. Type your question into the search window and it'll bring up all the information that you need on that. I mean, it is absolutely vital for parents because you can't say to your child, I don't know. You know, you've got to be able to give an answer. And, I mean, a lot of us are grandparents too. And, you know, we need to be able to give those sort of answers to our grandchildren.
Yep.
There is absolutely no prize for ignorance in this day and age. I mean, look at all the helps we've got for information. Google and all of these and all of the AI sites and so on. But if you want,
at least the AI sites tell you that they hallucinate.
But at least you know that you are going to get biblical truth from the creation.com website.
Yeah.
So
I've got to say, that's why I love listening to you guys from Creation, because quite a few of you guys now that we've talked to have actually, you know, had a little bit of a Christian background, gone to university, fallen away because you've been, you know, pounded with all this other stuff. But then, you know, most of you guys are doctors and scientists and PhDs and all this sort of stuff. And it hasn't taken most of you that long after uni to scratch your head and say, hang on a minute, it doesn't all add up.
That's exactly right. And look, I have to say, Mick, we are so grateful for this program, you know, and we really praise and thank Rema Central Coast for giving us the opportunity. And I trust our regular listeners are grateful for that too, especially to be able to hear Christian scientists who, as you said, are leaders in their fields. And that's what we've got here at Rema Central Coast. And, I mean, how good is that for a small, regional, you know, Christian radio station?
Yep.
You wouldn't get that anywhere else in the world the way we have it here.
Yeah.
So to all our listeners out there, I reckon we should be very, very grateful to Rema for the opportunity that they give
and
us.
to Creation Ministries for the time they give us.
Well, yeah, but we love to do it. That's our job. But you're such a blessing to be able to give us that time, and we really do appreciate it.
Cool. Now, Dr. John, in the news this week, we've seen lots of, I call it non-news stories. There's been so many stories that I've had to scratch my head afterwards and go, are they serious? Is that really a news story? I mean, even the footy, well, this is the southern footy, this is the Mexican footy. You know, there was a story that hit the news that on social media exploded like a bomb, and that was when an Aboriginal man got up and did the Welcome to Country.
Yeah. Well, you may laugh at the southern footy, Mick, but that's my specialty because
the Mexican footy. Yeah,
I am a Mexican, and I really do follow it. And I was watching the game on Saturday night between GWS and Brisbane. And yeah, that Welcome to Country, he not only said 50,000 years, he blew it out to 250,000 years.
Yeah.
250,000 years. And he said that they'd been doing Welcome to Country for 250,000 years.
Yeah.
Now, as we all know, it's only a very, very recent, in the last couple of decades, that it's been done. So who on earth would they have been welcoming for 250,000 years?
Well, no one actually came here until, I think the Dutch were sort of 1600s or something. I mean, 250,000, they were welcoming no one. There was no one new to come in.
There was nobody to welcome. I mean, look, this is how outrageous it gets, you know, and we say many times on this program, the Bible is very, very clear on the time frame of creation. And creation took place 6,000 years ago, according to the Bible. There was a great flood about 4,500 years ago, and everybody on the face of the earth, every culture, every tribe, is descended from the inhabitants of the ark. That's it. That's what the Bible says, and it's demonstrably true. You can look at it with anthropology and all other sorts of things. That is the absolute biblical truth.
All righty. It is 4:26. We're with Dr. John from Creation Ministries International. As he mentioned, if you have any questions, you can go to creation.com, or of course you can send them through to us and we'll answer them on air. Just send a text message to 0401 949 949. Coming up next, we've got Tasha Layton. This is a song called Look What You've Done. That was Torrin Wells with Close. You're on 94.9. It is 24 minutes to 5 and we're with Dr. John from Creation Ministries International. And you can ask questions of Dr. John. Just send them through on our text line 0401 949 949. Now, just before the break, Dr. John, we were talking about, how fortunate we are to have so many Creation Ministries guys from Australia and New Zealand. And I think some people are wondering, why is it always Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah. Well, look, Mick, I hope all our listeners realise that all of these creation talks are live. None of these are recorded. So even if you've got one of the speakers from interstate or one of the guys from New Zealand, it's live. It's not recorded. And up until now, we haven't had any facility to be able to do recordings. But as you were mentioning, maybe that'll be able to be changed in the near future, because it would be great to get some of the, particularly the British speakers on.
Yep.
One that I was going to mention this week, Professor Stuart Burgess he's an engineering professor from Bristol University, and he is absolutely fantastic. He's just written a new paper on some of the joints in the body. I mean, he's an engineering professor, and he is absolutely brilliant. And he's pointed out that a lot of the engineering, particularly at the miniature level, is very, very tricky. Mm-hmm. And he's done a lot of studies in nature and in the human body to get engineering ideas. Because he knows who was the greatest and most brilliant engineer, and it was the Lord God who created it all. Uh-huh. And he has done some brilliant work in satellites. He had one challenge with one of the most expensive European satellites that cost over $1 billion to produce.
Wow!
And as our listeners would probably be aware, once the satellite's up there, it can get its power from the sun.
Yes.
So that's beaut. But of course, that requires it to deploy a huge array of solar panels.
Yep.
Now, they can't be on the satellite erected, when it goes up there. They've got to be built into it. And then the engineers have got to find a way of opening up the panels and spreading them all out and orientating them to the direction of the sun and all of this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that is very, very tricky engineering. And as he said, he had many a sleepless night over that design and spent a lot of time praying about it, because, you see, if it's got to deploy properly the first time. You can't go up there and correct it if it doesn't. And if it doesn't work properly, then all you have up there is $1 billion piece of space junk that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, you really have to get it right. Anyway, by the grace of God, he said it did work perfectly the first time.
Yep.
And other things he's done, he's completely redesigned the bicycle frames. I've mentioned this before, for the British cycling team, the Olympic team, Team GB, and they are the world leaders at the moment. Now, we've beaten them for a couple of gold medals, but by and large, the British team are the best in the world.
They just stole one of our push bike riders.
Oh, they did. Well, he obviously wants to ride the best bikes because Professor Burgess has redesigned those frames, and his bicycle designs are top secret. They're not going
you've got to read the Bible to get the secrets.
That's right. And he's just written a paper on the brilliant design of our human body joints, and he's talking about the wrist and the knee and the foot. And the wrist joint, he says these three joints are absolutely fantastically designed. And your wrist joint has got 8 little bones in it, and they all articulate perfectly together and give you the dexterity that you have in your hands. And same goes for the knee and the foot. And it's so important for engineers to study God's designs because it really has an application in the field of humanoid robotics.
Yep.
You know, if we think about Star Wars, you know, you had C-3PO there. Well, C-3PO was actually a human in a suit.
What?
Oh, yeah. But you might remember that one scene where he got his arm ripped off. Did you remember that? And, of course, there's all the wires sticking out and whatever.
So it couldn't have been a human.
Yeah, but they must have worked out some way of doing that scene. But in reality, it was a human in a robot suit.
Yep.
But in reality, the engineering is very, very tricky. And it's not easy for engineers to give a humanoid robot the flexibility and the fine movements that a human being has. And there have been plenty of wonderful designs, and they're getting better all the time. But it's the fine movements that are the challenge, and that area of engineering is called biomimetics. And because Stuart Burgess is a Christian engineer, he knows he's going to get his best ideas from studying what God has already done.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes. It'd be wonderful if we could get him on the program.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that these days we've got some of the microscopes where we could see into parts of the body that we've never been able to see into before. And I can understand how, hundreds of years ago, someone might have said, oh, wow, we look a bit like a monkey. Maybe we come from monkey. But now that they can see all of these billions of little tiny differences and changes in between a monkey and a human, it's getting to the point of it's ridiculous to believe that there could possibly be a link between a monkey and a human because we can see too much in there. Yeah, and of course, he would see all of that.
Well, that's true too. But of course, it's not new, that a lot of people have made great studies of the human body to try and get things right. One of the greatest anatomists of all time was Leonardo da Vinci, and he cut up lots of bodies that he got because he wanted to get all the muscles and everything else absolutely right. For his artistry, and Michelangelo would have been much the same. So none of this is new. But look, just to finish off today, I wanted to get back to the truth of the Bible. Because that really is what we're all about. And we talk about its truth in history and science, particularly the time frame, and as we mentioned before, the 6,000 years. But Dr. Mark Harwood, who we've had on the program, he's had a video out on the creation.com website about the 5 reasons why we can really trust the Bible. And one of the first reasons is the accuracy of its prophecy, which you can name all the other so-called holy books in the world, but none of them have got the prophetic accuracy that they don't have prophecy anyway. But the Bible is just so accurate. We read Isaiah 53, we read that description of the servant being crucified, and it is just so accurate as to what happened to Jesus. And it was written 700 years beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you do that unless you're God? And of course, Isaiah has many other prophecies that are just fantastic. I mean, he even mentions Cyrus the Persian by name. Isaiah wrote it about 700 BC, and the Persians conquered Babylon in 530 BC. So he mentioned Cyrus by name 170 or 100 odd years before he was even born. Now only God can do that. And of course a lot of the biblical critics said, we don't believe that sort of prophecy. They must have put that in there after the event to make it look like prophecy. But ancient scrolls of Isaiah have been discovered, particularly in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're written in a obviously copied by hand in a type of Hebrew script that's much older than 530 BC.
Yes.
And I mean, you can't tell the Jewish people that it's been tampered with. I've been to Jerusalem, and they've got a copy of that Isaiah scroll that was found in the amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they've actually built a complete shrine to house the scroll. It's a very, very impressive museum in the grounds of the Jerusalem Museum.
Yeah,
and they've got the scroll all around displayed.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the one they've got on display is a copy of the real one, because they don't want anybody to actually get at the real one.
Probably in a bunker somewhere.
and do any damage to it. But, some of those things that have been found, the ancient scrolls that have been found, they are just fantastic relics of antiquity. But anyway, that's one of the points that Mark was making, that prophecy and the accuracy of it is just one of the outstanding things about biblical truth. So, to reassure all our listeners, you can trust the Bible. Everything it says, it's never been caught out in anything making any inaccurate claims.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, thank you, Dr. John. Another awesome week. And I'm not sure who we've got next week. I think we might have Dr. Don Batten.
Yeah,
which will be exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm off for a couple of weeks, so but I'll look forward to coming back again, Mick. Don't worry about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dr. John. It was absolutely awesome.